Nobody warns you. That's the thing that gets me every time I think about this. You walk into a nursery, you see something in full bloom, color, texture, height, and every instinct you have says yes. And why wouldn't it? The tag doesn't say we'll consume your entire left border by August. It doesn't say reseed so aggressively your neighbors will start finding it in their lawns. It doesn't say looks magnificent for 3 weeks and then becomes an ongoing full season management problem. It just shows you the flower. I was standing in the back corner of my yard last Tuesday, just trying to pull what I thought was a single stray vine near the fence. And it hit me. I wasn't gardening anymore. I was negotiating a surrender. Most of the content you've watched about flowers shows you the glossy, filtered version of a perennial in its first week of bloom. It doesn't show you the 3 years of backbreaking regret that follow when that easy care plant decides it actually owns your zip code. That's what this video is about. I'm going to give you 13 plants I've personally planted, personally regretted, and in most cases personally spent months, sometimes years, trying to undo. Not because they're ugly. Most of them are genuinely beautiful. But beauty is not the same as being a good garden citizen, and the prettiest plant at the nursery is often the most dangerous thing you can bring home. Before I get into the list, let me explain something that took me far too long to understand. Most gardening content has a survivorship problem. The gardens that got quietly taken over by aggressive spreaders, that lost entire borders to something that looked innocent at the nursery, that spent 3 seasons recovering from one bad planting decision. Those gardens don't end up in magazines. What survives to be photographed and promoted is the success story. The plant that worked perfectly in someone's ideal conditions, tended by someone with more time than most of us have. There's also something called the invasive lag phase. Most people plant something, and for the first year it does nothing. You think it's struggling, you give it more water, you fertilize it. The modern analogy is a software update stuck at 99%. It looks like nothing is happening, but the system is actually rewriting its entire architecture in the background. By the time you realize a plant is invasive, the lag phase is over. The update has installed, and at that point, hitting delete usually requires a shovel and a weekend of prayer. The reason this matters here is that every plant on this list looked perfectly well behaved for exactly long enough to make you trust it. Now let's talk about what actually happened. Number 1, mint. I know you already know, but I'm including it because the number of people who still plant mint directly into garden beds suggests the warning is not getting through loudly enough. A pot is not a cage for mint. It's a suggestion. I remember sitting on my porch one morning, coffee in hand, looking at what seemed like a perfectly contained pot of peppermint. It looked fine. What I didn't see were the runners, like the rhizomes, creeping through the drainage hole and into the soil beneath. 3 months later, the area under my deck was a peppermint forest. Mint doesn't grow up. It grows out. It uses underground horizontal stems to bypass your mulch, your edging, and your patience. Plant it in a container. Sink the container into the ground if you want the visual. Never directly in soil. Never. Number 2, trumpet vine. If you want your house to look like a jungle within a season, plant this. If you want to keep your gutters attached to your roof, don't. The catalog tells you these are magnificent for hummingbirds. And they are. What it doesn't tell you about are the aerial rootlets. These aren't just roots. They're biological crowbars that find the smallest crack in your siding and expand. I've seen trumpet vine lift shingles. I've seen it grow under siding and emerge through a light socket in a garage. Gorgeous, genuinely destructive. The lag phase on this one is about 2 years. After that, it belongs to the vine. Number 3, morning glory. I know that heavenly blue is one of the most striking colors in nature, but the name is wrong. It should be called generational regret. Morning glories are seed machines. A single plant can drop thousands of seeds that remain viable in your soil for up to 30 years. I was weeding my vegetable patch 3 years after I had removed mine, and I was still pulling seedlings every single morning. If you've been fighting a plant you thought was finished, if you've been pulling the same thing out of the same bed for years and can't figure out why it keeps coming back, This is probably why. Number 4. Lily of the Valley. It smells like a dream. It looks like a fairy tale. Beneath that delicate white bell is a ruthless, toxic ground cover that will choke out anything in its path. Most people plant this in a shady spot where nothing else grows. There's usually a reason nothing else grows there. And once Lily of the Valley moves in, nothing else ever will. It forms a dense mat of roots that is nearly impossible to remove once established. One more thing. If you have dogs or children, this is a high-stakes plant. Every part of it is toxic. That's worth knowing before it's already in the ground. Number 5. Wisteria. Wait. Before anyone comes for me in the comments, I know. Wisteria in full bloom is a religious experience. But have you ever seen what a 20-year-old wisteria trunk looks like? It's not a vine. It's a python made of wood. It takes years to bloom reliably, 4 to 7 in many cases. And in the meantime, it requires aggressive pruning twice a year. Left unchecked for even one season, it puts out runners that push into fences, pergolas, gutters, roof tiles. I've seen wisteria snap wooden structures like they were nothing. If you aren't prepared to manage this plant with a chainsaw every 6 months, you aren't growing wisteria. You're hosting a slow-motion wrecking ball. If you have the right structure, the time, the patience, worth it. For most gardens, it will become the thing that owns you. Number 6. Yellow Archangel. This is the one your neighbor gives you over the fence for free. It fills in gaps really fast. That should be your first warning. In the gardening world, fills in gaps fast is code for will take over your lawn and your neighbor's lawn by July. Yellow Archangel is part of the mint family and behaves like it. It's variegated, it looks attractive in shade, and it is a biological carpet that smothers everything beneath it, including native plants that actually belong there. Number 7. Crocosmia. I planted Crocosmia lucifer once. Brilliant red-orange spikes in late summer, architectural foliage, genuinely impressive in any border. The corms multiply underground every year, each cluster producing more growth than the last. By year 3, you have a plant that has quietly colonized a significant section of your border. And lifting it is one of the more labor-intensive jobs you will ever do in a garden because the corms mat together so densely that removing them disturbs everything around them. Stop what you're doing for a second if you have Crocosmia and you've never lifted it. Go look at it. If it's been in the ground more than 2 years without dividing, you'll understand what I mean immediately. Number 8. Japanese Anemone. This one caught me completely off guard because it behaves like a well-mannered, elegant, late-season perennial for the first year or two. Then the runners start. I remember sitting in a dentist's waiting room looking at a gardening magazine that called these the perfect late-season edition. I actually laughed, out loud, to no one, because I knew that edition was actually a hostile takeover. I put the magazine down and realized most of those writers have never had to dig these things out of clay soil. The roots are brittle. Any fragment left in the ground will regenerate, which means the more aggressively you try to remove it, the more thoroughly you spread it. If you have space and want a large naturalized area of late summer color, it does that beautifully. If you have a structured border with plants you value beside it, plant something else. Number 9. Butterfly bush. This is the most controversial one on the list. We're told to plant these to save the butterflies. The official narrative says they're a miracle for pollinators. The truth is more complicated. Butterfly bush provides nectar, but it's not a host plant for larvae. It's junk food. It feeds the adult but does nothing for the next generation. And in many regions, it's classified as invasive because it escapes gardens and chokes out the native plants that butterflies actually need to complete their life cycle. Deadhead obsessively if you're keeping it. Look into sterile cultivars, or replace it with native alternatives that do the whole job, not just the attractive part. Number 10. Bugleweed. The Latin name is Ajuga reptans. Reptans means creeping. The name should have been sufficient warning. It's sold as a no-mow alternative, and it delivers on that promise. Because within 2 seasons, you won't have any grass left to mow. It's a beautiful purple ground cover until it decides it wants to be your entire yard. Number 11. Gooseneck loosestrife. The flowers are charming. The villain arc starts around year 3. It's a moisture lover. If you have a damp area in your garden, it will thrive there. And then it will march. I had a client who planted 3 of these in a low-lying border. 2 years later, the area had to be cleared with equipment. That's not an exaggeration. A plant that doesn't respect your boundaries isn't a flower. It's a tenant that stopped paying rent. Number 12, running bamboo. I don't care how much you want a Zen garden. If you plant running bamboo without physical root barrier installed properly underground, you're committing a crime against your future self. If you're half listening to this while looking at bamboo on a nursery website, stop. Look at the screen. Unless it says clumping bamboo, do not buy it. Running bamboo is not a plant. It's a subterranean invasion force. I've seen it grow through floorboards. It will find whatever is below your garden, and it will get there. Number 13, Sweet Autumn Clematis. It smells like vanilla. It looks like a cloud of white stars in September, and it will seed itself into every bed, every fence line, and every yard within reach. It's described in catalogs as a vigorous grower. In gardening terms, vigorous is a euphemism. What it actually means is, I will eat your shed. Now, you might be thinking, I have one of these and I love it. That's fine. Some of these plants have their place under specific conditions, managed by someone who knows what they're getting into. But here's what I want you to sit with for a moment. We've been trained to value aggression and call it success. We want things that grow fast, bloom big, and never die. But in nature, things that never die are called invasive. The most successful gardeners aren't the ones with the most vigorous plants. They're the ones who understand that constraint is a design tool. A garden is a conversation between you and the soil. If the plant is the only one talking, it isn't a conversation. It's a lecture. The real question this video can't fully answer is what's happening quietly in your garden right now that you haven't noticed yet. The plants on this list were problems I could eventually see. The more unsettling version of this is what's changing your soil chemistry, shading out root systems, competing with things you've invested in, below the surface, before any visible sign appears. That's a different conversation. And it's coming. I almost wish I hadn't learned the history of some of these nursery staples. Because once you understand that the catalog is a commercial machine designed to sell you fast results that lead to long-term maintenance, you can't go back to the version of the nursery where everything in full bloom looks like a must-have. You're stuck with the responsibility of that knowledge now, just like I am. I don't know where you're watching this. Maybe it's late. Maybe you're looking out the window at something in your garden that's starting to look a bit too vigorous. If you've made it this far, I think you already know why this matters to you specifically. Save this video. Take it with you the next time you're at a nursery. The moment something in full bloom is calling to you, come back to this list first. This channel isn't for people who want their garden to look like a magazine. It's for people who want to understand why things actually work and why they don't. So you stop spending time and money fixing problems you didn't have to create. If that's you, subscribe. We go this deep every week. Which of these do you have in your garden right now? And did you already know it was going to be a problem? Or did this video just explain something you've been trying to figure out for a while? Drop it in the comments. I want to see which ones are still winning. And if you're wondering what to plant instead, the next video covers exactly that. Because the gap left by removing an aggressive spreader is precisely the kind of opening the wrong plant will fill immediately. That conversation starts right here.